The alarm screamed through the ship like a dying animal. Red lights flashed in every corner. The floor shook so hard that Tejo could feel his teeth rattling inside his skull. He grabbed the metal rail above his head and held on with everything he had. "We're going down!" Someone shouted from the front of the dropship. Tejo couldn't see who it was. Smoke filled the cabin. Sparks flew from broken wires in the ceiling. The smell of burning metal filled his nose and made his eyes water. This was not how the mission was supposed to go. 3 hours ago, everything had been normal. Sergeant Park Tejo and his squad of 5 soldiers had left the main fleet to scout a small moon called HFY. Nobody lived there. Nobody had ever been there. It was just a quick job. Fly down, look around, fly back. Easy work, but something had hit them. Tejo still didn't know what. One moment they were flying through the atmosphere. The next moment, half the ship was gone and they were falling like a rock thrown into a lake. He could hear his squad members screaming. He could hear the pilot trying to regain control. He could hear the ship breaking apart around him, piece by piece, like a toy being ripped open by angry hands. Tejo made a decision. He let go of the rail and ran. The floor tilted sharply to the left. He fell, rolled, and got back up. His training kicked in. His body moved without thinking. He had practiced emergency drills 1,000 times. His muscles knew what to do even when his brain was filled with fear. The escape pods were at the back of the ship. 4 small metal eggs built to keep a person alive during a crash. Tejo pushed through the smoke and found them. 3 pods were already gone. Someone had been faster than him. 1 pod remained. He didn't hesitate. He threw himself inside and slammed the button to close the door. The pod shot away from the ship, just as the dropship exploded behind him. Through the tiny window, Tejo saw fire bloom in the sky like an orange flower. Pieces of metal flew in every direction. He watched the ship that had carried him across the stars turn into dust and smoke. Then the ground came rushing up to meet him. The pod hit something hard. Trees, maybe. Tejo was thrown around inside like a ball. His head slammed against the wall. Pain exploded behind his eyes. He felt the pod rolling, bouncing, crashing through whatever was below. Then everything stopped. For a long moment, Tejo just lay there. He was alive. He was sure of that because dead people didn't feel this much pain. Every part of his body hurt. His head was bleeding. His ribs felt like someone had kicked them with heavy boots. But he was breathing. He was alive. He opened his eyes and looked around the tiny pod. Emergency lights glowed soft blue. The walls were dented but not broken. The air inside was still good. He had made it, but he couldn't stay here forever. Tejo pushed the release button and the door fell open. Strange air rushed in. It smelled sweet, like fruit and flowers mixed together. It was warm and wet, like a bathroom after a hot shower. He took a careful breath and waited for something bad to happen. Nothing did. He crawled out of the pod and looked at the world around him. It was like nothing he had ever seen before. The trees were massive, taller than any building on Earth. Their leaves glowed soft green and blue, giving light even though the sky above was dark. Strange plants covered the ground, some of them moving slowly even though there was no wind. In the distance, he could hear sounds he couldn't identify. Animals, maybe. Or something else. Tejo tried to stand and almost fell down again. His combat suit felt wrong. He looked down and saw the problem. The suit was damaged. Badly damaged. Big cracks ran along the chest piece. The arm panels were hanging loose. The small screen on his wrist showed nothing but error messages. He tried the temperature control. Nothing. He tried the oxygen filter. Nothing. He tried the communication system. Nothing at all. The suit was dead. And if he kept wearing it, he would be dead too. The broken systems were already making strange sounds. The battery pack on his back was getting hot. If it exploded, he would die in fire. Taeho had a choice to make. Keep the armor and hope it didn't kill him. Or take it off and face this alien world with nothing but his bare skin. He chose to live. It took him 5 minutes to remove all the pieces. The chest plate, the arm guards, the leg covers, the helmet. Each piece fell to the ground with a heavy sound. When he was done, Taeho stood in nothing but his thin underclothes. He felt small. He felt exposed. He felt like prey, but he also felt free. The alien air moved across his skin. It was strange, but not painful. His lungs pulled in breath after breath, and his body didn't reject it. Somehow, against all logic, the atmosphere of this alien moon was safe for humans. He should be dead. He should be choking on poison gases. But instead, he was breathing easier than he had in months. Taeho looked at the pile of broken armor at his feet. Every soldier knew the rules. Never remove your suit on an alien world. Never expose yourself to unknown environments. Never trust air you haven't tested with proper equipment. He had broken every rule in the book, and he was still alive. The jungle around him seemed to watch with curious eyes. Glowing insects floated between the massive trees. Strange bird-like creatures called to each other in voices that sounded almost like music. Somewhere far away, something large moved through the undergrowth with heavy footsteps. Taeho knew he needed to move. He needed to find water. He needed to find food. He needed to find shelter before whatever lived in this jungle decided to find him first. He picked a direction and started walking. His bare feet touched the soft ground of an alien world. His bare arms brushed against plants that no human had ever seen before. His bare chest rose and fell with breath that should have killed him, but didn't. He was alone. He was exposed. He was afraid, but he was alive. And for now, that was enough. Behind him, hidden in the shadows of the glowing trees, something watched him go. Something with golden eyes and silver blue skin. Something that had never seen a creature quite like him before. Something very, very curious. 3 days passed on the alien moon. 3 days of walking, searching, and trying not to die. Taeho learned quickly. He had to. There was no one to teach him. There were no books to read. There was only the jungle and its secrets, and he had to figure them out on his own. On the first day, he found water. A small stream ran between the glowing trees, clear and cold. He was so thirsty that he almost drank without thinking. But something made him stop. A small voice in his head that told him to be careful. He watched the stream for an hour. He saw small creatures come to drink from it. He saw plants grow along its edges. He saw fish swimming beneath the surface. Everything that touched the water seemed healthy and alive. So he cupped his hands, brought the water to his lips, and drank. It was the best water he had ever tasted. Clean and sweet, with just a hint of something he couldn't name. His body accepted it without complaint. Another rule broken. Another miracle of survival. On the second day, he found food. Strange fruits grew on the lower branches of some trees. They were purple and soft, about the size of his fist. Taeho watched the local animals eat them first. If the creatures here could eat them, maybe he could too. He took a small bite and waited. Nothing bad happened. He took another bite. Still nothing. The fruit tasted strange but good. His stomach didn't reject it. His body didn't get sick. By the end of the second day, he had eaten 4 of them and felt stronger than before. On the third day, he found shelter. A massive tree had fallen long ago, and its hollow trunk made a perfect hiding place. The inside was dry and warm. The opening was small enough that large predators couldn't fit through. Taeho gathered soft leaves and made a bed. He covered the entrance with branches. He made something that almost felt like home, but through all 3 days, he felt it. The feeling of being watched. It started small, just a tickle at the back of his neck, a sense that eyes were looking at him from the shadows. He would turn around quickly, hoping to catch whatever was there, but he never saw anything, just trees and plants and glowing insects. At first, Tejo thought he was being paranoid. His mind was playing tricks on him. He was alone on an alien world, scared and tired. Of course, he would imagine things, but the feeling didn't go away. It got stronger. By the 3rd night, he was sure something was following him. Something intelligent. Something that knew how to stay hidden. He could feel it watching him when he ate. He could feel it watching him when he drank. He could feel it watching him when he tried to sleep. Tejo set traps around his shelter. Simple things made from vines and sharp sticks. If anything tried to approach during the night, he would hear it. He would be ready, but nothing triggered the traps. Whatever watched him was too smart for that. Sleep became difficult. Every sound made him jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. He would doze off for a few minutes and then snap awake, heart pounding, eyes searching the darkness. His body was exhausted, but his mind wouldn't let him rest. On the 4th night, he couldn't fight anymore. The days of walking and surviving had drained everything from him. His legs felt like they were filled with sand. His eyes burned every time he blinked. His thoughts moved slowly, like they were swimming through thick mud. Tejo lay down in his shelter and stared at the ceiling of the hollow tree. He knew something was out there. He knew it was dangerous to sleep. He knew all the rules about staying alert in hostile territory, but his body had reached its limit. Humans were strong, but they were not machines. They needed rest. They needed sleep. Without it, they would break down like any engine that ran too long without stopping. He closed his eyes and felt the darkness take him. Sleep came fast and deep. No dreams, no thoughts. Just the black emptiness of true exhaustion. His body finally relaxed. His breathing slowed. His muscles unclenched for the first time in days. He didn't hear the soft footsteps approaching his shelter. He didn't hear the careful hands moving aside the branches that covered his entrance. He didn't feel the presence that slipped inside and crouched beside him. She had been watching him since the fire fell from the sky. 3 days and 3 nights, never more than 100 steps away. She had seen everything. The crash. The escape. The moment he removed his shell and stood bare before the world. She had expected him to die. Every creature she knew would have died. The air of her world was poison to outsiders. The water was filled with things that killed most species. The food was not safe for any but her people. The predators here had no mercy, but he didn't die. He just kept going. She watched him drink water that should have destroyed his insides. She watched him eat fruit that should have stopped his heart. She watched him fight off a jungle cat with nothing but a pointed stick and his bare hands. She watched him bleed, and then she watched the bleeding stop on its own. What was he? The question burned in her mind like a hot coal. Her people had stories about creatures from other worlds. Weak things that needed machines to survive. Fragile beings that broke at the smallest touch. Things that could be killed with simple weapons. This creature was not weak. This creature was not fragile. This creature refused to die, no matter what the jungle threw at him. Now she was inside his shelter, close enough to touch him. He was sleeping so deeply that he didn't notice her at all. His chest rose and fell with steady breaths. His face was relaxed and peaceful. He looked almost harmless, but she had seen what he could do. She knew better. Slowly, carefully, she moved closer. She needed to understand. She needed to know what made him so different. Her hand reached out and pressed against his chest. right over the place where his heart beat strong and steady. His skin was warm, warmer than any creature she had ever touched. The heart beneath her fingers pumped with a rhythm that felt powerful and unstoppable. She leaned closer, studying his face, trying to understand. Then his eyes opened. For one frozen moment, they stared at each other. Golden eyes meeting brown eyes. Alien face meeting human face. Two creatures from different worlds, separated by nothing but a few inches of air dot. Then he moved. She had never seen anything move so fast. Tejo woke to weight pressing down on his chest. His eyes snapped open, and his body reacted before his brain could catch up. He saw the face above him. Not human? Silver blue skin that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. Eyes like pools of liquid gold, large and curious. Features that were almost human, but stretched in ways that made them clearly alien. Hair that wasn't really hair at all. The thin tendrils that moved on their own like gentle snakes. She was straddling him. Her hands pressed against his chest. Her face was just inches from his own. Every survival instinct in his body screamed at once. Tejo grabbed her wrists and twisted his body with explosive force. In one smooth motion, he flipped their positions. Now he was on top, pinning her beneath him, his weight pressing her into the soft leaves of his makeshift bed. His hands held her wrists against the ground. His eyes burned with fear and anger and the desperate need to survive. She could have fought back. He could see the strength in her thin arms. He could feel the power in the muscles beneath her strained skin. But she didn't struggle at all. She just looked up at him with those golden eyes, her head tilted slightly to one side. Then she made a sound. It was soft and musical, like bells ringing in a gentle wind. It took him a moment to understand what he was hearing. She was laughing. "You survive," she said. The words hit him like a physical blow. She was speaking. Not in any language he knew, but somehow he understood her. The sounds she made weren't quite right, like she was learning to form words her mouth wasn't built for. But the meaning was clear. "You survive," she repeated. 4 rotations. No shell, no weapons. You survive. She lifted her hand, moving slowly so he wouldn't see it as a threat. Her fingers pressed against his chest, right over his pounding heart. "What are you?" Tejo didn't know how to answer. He didn't even know how he understood her question. The words she spoke weren't words at all, not really. They were something else. Sounds mixed with feelings, mixed with thoughts that somehow found their way into his brain. "I'm human," he said finally. His voice came out rough and dry. He hadn't spoken in days. "My name is Tejo. I'm a soldier. My ship crashed." She repeated his words silently, her lips moving without sound. "Learning them. Testing them." "Oh man," she said slowly. Tejo, Saldir. Each word came out strange but understandable. "I am Lyra. I am Healer Scout. I watch you since fire fall from sky." Lyra. Her name was Lyra. Tejo realized he was still pinning her to the ground. Slowly, carefully, he released her wrists and sat back. She didn't run away. She just sat up and looked at him with that same curious expression. "You were watching me," he said. "For 3 days. Why didn't you come to me before?" Lyra tilted her head again. It seemed to be something her people did when they were thinking. "Wait to see if you die," she said simply. "All creatures from sky die. Air kills them. Water kills them. Food kills them. Always die, very fast." She pointed at him. "You not die. Very strange. Very interesting." Tejo let out a long breath. He should be dead. She was telling him what he had already suspected. This world was poison to outsiders. He had survived only by luck, or something else he couldn't understand. "Why can I breathe your air?" he asked. "Why doesn't your food kill me?" Lyra reached out and touched his arm. Her fingers were cool and smooth against his skin. She turned his arm over, looking at the veins beneath the surface, the muscles that moved under the flesh. "Do not know," she admitted. "My people study many creatures from other worlds. All same, weak, fragile, need machines to live, need special air, need special food, die without their shells." She looked into his eyes. "Your people not same. Your people different. Different how?" Lyra was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "My people have stories," she said. "Old stories. Stories about world far away. Dangerous world. World where air burns and water poisons. World where ground shakes and sky throws fire. World where everything wants to kill. Nothing should live there, but something does." She pressed her hand against his chest again, feeling his heartbeat. "Stories say creatures from this world are monsters. Cannot be killed. Cannot be stalked. Keep fighting when they should die. Keep moving when they should fall. Very strong. Very dangerous. Very, very scary." Tejo felt a chill run down his spine. "You think I'm from this world? This dangerous world?" "I think you are what stories warn about," Lyra said. "I think you are a monster from Death World. I think you are human." The word sounded heavy when she said it. Not like a simple name. More like a warning. A threat. A nightmare given form. "I'm not a monster," Tejo said quietly. "I'm just a man trying to get home." Lyra studied his face for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled. Her teeth were small and white, different from human teeth, but not frightening. The smile made her look almost friendly. "Maybe monster not know it is monster," she said. "Maybe monster think it is just normal." She reached out and took his hand, her cool fingers wrapping around his warm ones. "I watched you fight Beast yesterday. You have no weapons. Beast has claws like knives. You should die. But Beast is dead and you are alive. Normal creatures do not do this." Tejo remembered the fight. The jungle cat that had attacked him near the stream. He had acted without thinking, using moves his body knew from years of training. He had taken hits that should have torn him open. But his skin had held, and his fists had broken the creature's skull. "I was scared," he admitted. "I thought I was going to die." "But you did not run," Lyra said. "You fought. You bled. You won." She squeezed his hand gently. "This is what stories say. Humans do not run. Humans fight. Humans win." She stood up and pulled him to his feet. She was shorter than him by almost a head, but she didn't seem small. There was a strength in her that had nothing to do with size. "I decide something," she announced. "I help you. I want to see more. I want to know if stories are true. I want to know what human can do." Tejo looked at this strange alien woman who had watched him for 3 days, who had snuck into his shelter and touched his heart, who now offered to help him for no reason except curiosity. "Why?" he asked. "Why help me?" Lyra smiled again, her golden eyes bright in the glowing darkness. "Because I am curious," she said, "and because I think you are most interesting thing to ever fall from sky." The days that followed were strange and wonderful. Lyra became his guide, his teacher, and something close to a friend. She showed him things about this world that he never could have learned alone. And in return, he showed her things about himself that seemed to amaze her more and more. They walked through the jungle together. Lyra knew every path, every safe place, every danger to avoid. She showed him which fruits were best to eat. She showed him where the cleanest water flowed. She showed him caves where he could hide from storms and places where dangerous predators slept during the day. But mostly, she watched him. Always watching with those golden eyes full of curiosity. "Tell me about your world," she said one evening as they sat by a small fire Taeho had made. Fire was another thing that amazed her. Her people could make light, but not this burning, dancing light that humans seemed to summon so easily. Taeho thought about Earth. It had been so long since he left. The memories felt like dreams now. "It's beautiful," he said. "We have oceans that cover most of the planet. Blue water that goes on forever. We have mountains so tall they touch the clouds. We have forests and deserts and frozen lands covered in ice." Lyra listened carefully. "Your world sounds peaceful." Taeho laughed. It was the first time he had laughed in weeks. "Peaceful? No. Earth is one of the most dangerous places in the galaxy. We have storms that destroy cities. We have waves that swallow coastlines. The ground shakes and opens up to eat buildings. Fire falls from the sky sometimes. And the creatures there, the animals, many of them want to kill you." Lyra's eyes went wide. "And humans live there? With all this danger?" "We evolved there," Taeho said. "We didn't just survive it. We learned to thrive. We built houses that could stand against storms. We created machines that could fly above the waves. We made weapons to protect ourselves from the animals. Whatever Earth threw at us, we found a way to beat it." He poked the fire with a stick, sending sparks flying into the dark air. "That's what humans do," he continued. "We adapt. We overcome. We refuse to give up. It doesn't matter how hard things get. We just keep pushing forward until we win." Lyra was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was soft with wonder. "My world is gentle," she said. "My people evolved in safety. We have no great storms. No shaking ground. No fire from sky. Our predators are few and weak. We learned to build and grow and heal. But we did not learn to fight. We did not learn to survive against impossible things." She looked at him with something like sadness. "When danger comes to my people, we die. We do not know how to push back. We do not know how to win against things stronger than us." She touched her chest, where her own heart beat slow and steady. "But you are different. Danger comes, and you become more dangerous. Pain comes, and you push through it. Death comes, and you say no." Taeho didn't know what to say. He had never thought about it that way before. To him, surviving was just what you did. You didn't give up because giving up meant dying. It was simple. But to Lyra, it was miraculous. The next day, she took him to a special place. A clearing in the jungle where the trees pulled back and the sky was visible above. In the center of the clearing stood a tall stone covered in strange markings. "This is old place," Lyra explained. "Very old. From time before my grandmother's grandmother. The markings tell stories about the universe." She pointed to different sections of the stone. "Here, the first people of my world. Here, the first ships to visit us from other stars. Here, the different species we have met." Each section showed different creatures. Some looked almost like Lyra, with similar faces and bodies. Others were completely alien, with too many arms or no legs or bodies made of shapes that hurt to look at. All of them were labeled with symbols that Taeho couldn't read. "Where are humans?" he asked. Lyra led him to the bottom of the stone, to a section that was different from the others. The creatures there were not drawn in gentle lines. They were carved deep and rough, like whoever made them was afraid. The images show beings with 2 arms and 2 legs and heads that could have been human faces, but they were surrounded by fire. They stood among broken machines and fallen enemies. They looked like warriors, like monsters, like things to fear. "This section is called Warning of Deathwalkers," Lyra said quietly. "It tells story of creatures from impossible world. Creatures that cannot exist but do. Creatures that breathe poison air and walk through fire and heal from wounds that kill all others." She traced the carved figures with her finger. For many generations, my people thought these were just stories. Myths to scare children. Nobody believed creatures like this could be real. The universe is not that cruel. She turned to look at Taeho. Then your fire fell from sky. And I found you. Taeho stared at the ancient carvings of humans. His ancestors, drawn by terrified aliens thousands of years ago. Deathwalkers. Monsters from an impossible world. We're not monsters, he said again, but the words felt weak. You survive what kills everything else, Lyra replied. You fight when you should run. You heal when you should die. You adapt to any situation. You never stop, never surrender, never accept defeat. She smiled sadly. What would you call such a creature? Taeho thought about that for a long time. He thought about every war in human history, every disaster they had survived, every time they had been knocked down and gotten back up, every time they had faced extinction and found a way to continue. Maybe they were monsters. Maybe that's what it took to survive a world like Earth. Maybe humans have become something more than normal creatures just by refusing to die. I would call them survivors, he said finally. Lyra nodded slowly. Yes, survivors. That is good word. She took his hand and held it tight. And now, survivor, I must tell you something important. You are not only human on this world. Your friend still lives. Taeho's heart jumped in his chest. Dongwoo? He survived? He did, Lyra said. But he is in danger. The Hollow Ones have taken him. They want to cut him open and learn his secrets. Her golden eyes were serious. If you want to save him, we must move fast. Can you do this? Can you be monster again? Taeho thought about his friend, his squad mate, his brother in everything but blood. Dongwoo had a wife back home, a child he had never met. He deserved to live. He deserved to go home. Yes, Taeho said. I can be whatever I need to be. And in his chest, his human heart beat strong and ready for war. They left at first light. Lyra explained everything as they walked. The Hollow Ones were a group of her people who believed that understanding other species was the key to power. They captured creatures from crashed ships and studied them. They cut them open to see how they worked. They learned their secrets and used that knowledge to make themselves stronger. When Dongwoo's escape pod had landed on the far side of the jungle, the Hollow Ones had found him first. They had never seen a human before. They didn't know what he was, but they knew he was valuable. How long until they hurt him? Taeho asked as he pushed through thick bush. Lyra moved beside him easily. She knew how to walk through the jungle without disturbing a single leaf. They study first. Watch and record. Learn from outside before looking inside. Maybe 5-6 rotations before they cut. 5 or 6 days. That was all the time he had. Then we need to move faster. Taeho said that the journey to the Hollow One's territory should have taken 10 days for normal creatures. Lyra told him this with certainty. The path was long and dangerous. It crossed rivers full of creatures with sharp teeth. It went over mountains where the air was thin and cold. It passed through valleys where poisonous plants grew so thick that their smell could kill. Taeho made the journey in 4 days. On the first day, they reached the rivers. The water moved fast and dark, and Lyra warned him about the things that lived beneath the surface. Creatures with jaws that could crush bone. Animals that could smell blood from far away. Monsters that waited at the bottom for prey to swim above. Taeho stripped off his shirt and dove in. The cold hit him like a punch to the chest. The current tried to drag him under. Things brushed against his legs, testing him, wondering if he was food. But he swam hard and fast, his arms cutting through the water like blades. He reached the other side in minutes, pulling himself onto the rocks and turning back to help Lyra. She crossed on his back, her arms wrapped around his neck, her eyes wide with shock at his speed. "You swim like water creature," she whispered. "Humans are built for many things," Tejo replied, water dripping from his hair. On the second day, they reached the mountains. The slope was steep and covered with loose rocks that slid underfoot. The air got thinner as they climbed higher. Lyra began to struggle, her breathing heavy and slow. Tejo barely noticed the change. His lungs worked harder, pulling more air with each breath. His heart pumped faster, pushing blood to muscles that needed oxygen. His body adjusted automatically, the way human bodies had been adjusting to harsh conditions for millions of years. When Lyra could no longer walk, he carried her. "Put me down," she protested weakly. "Too heavy. You will tire." "I won't," Tejo said, and he didn't. He carried her for 6 hours straight, climbing the mountain with an alien woman on his back, never stopping, never slowing down. His muscles screamed in pain. His bones felt like they were grinding together. Every part of him wanted to stop and rest, but Dongwu was waiting. So Tejo kept moving. On the third day, they entered the poison valleys. The plants here were beautiful in the most dangerous way. Bright colors and sweet smells that hid the death they carried. Lyra wore a cloth over her face and warned Tejo to do the same. He breathed the poison air and kept walking. His body fought against the toxins. His immune system worked overtime, destroying the dangerous chemicals before they could do harm. He coughed sometimes. His eyes watered. His skin felt like it was burning. But he didn't fall. He didn't stop. He pushed through the valley while Lyra watched with growing amazement. "Impossible," she whispered through her mask. "The fumes alone should stop your heart." "My heart doesn't stop easily," Tejo replied. On the fourth day, they reached the edge of Hollow One's territory. Tejo finally allowed himself to rest. He sat against a tree and felt every injury he had been ignoring. Cuts on his feet from sharp rocks, bruises on his back from carrying Lyra, burns on his skin from poison plants. His whole body was a map of pain, but he was alive. And he was close. Lyra sat beside him and looked at his wounds with concern. She had small tools in her pack, things she used for healing. She began to clean his cuts and apply strange paste that numbed the pain. "I have watched you for many days now," she said quietly as she worked. "I have seen things I did not believe were possible. You walked through fire and did not burn. You swam through death water and did not drown. You breathed poison air and did not die. You carried me when you should have fallen." She paused and looked into his eyes. "How do you keep going when your body screams to stop?" Tejo thought about the question. It wasn't easy to answer. The will to continue wasn't something you could explain with words. It was deeper than that. It was in the bones, in the blood, in the very cells that made a human body. "I think of the people I love," he said finally. "I think of my friend who needs me. I think of my family waiting back home. I think of all the reasons I have to live." He shrugged, wincing at the movement. "And then I take one more step. Just one more. And then another. And another. Until I get where I need to go." Lyra finished treating his wounds and sat back. "My people are not like this," she admitted. "When our bodies say stop, we stop. When pain comes, we rest. We do not have the ability to push past our limits the way you do." She touched his hand gently. "I think this is why your people conquered the death world. This is why you spread across the stars while we stayed on our gentle moon. You do not accept limits. You break them." Tejo looked toward the Hollow One's territory. Somewhere in there, his friend was waiting, scared, alone, maybe hurt. "Tomorrow we go in," he said. "Tomorrow we get him back." Lyra nodded slowly. "The Hollow Ones are dangerous. They have weapons. They have walls. They have many fighters. And I have one thing they don't, Taeho replied. What is that? Taeho smiled grimly, his eyes hard and determined. I have nothing left to lose. The Hollow One's compound was built into the side of a mountain. Taeho could see it from his hiding place in the trees. High walls made of dark stone. Guard towers at every corner. A single heavy gate at the front, sealed tight with metal bars, thicker than his arm dot. It looked impossible to break into. It looked like a fortress designed to keep everything out. Taeho studied it for an hour. He counted the guards. He watched their patterns. He noted where the walls were weakest and where the shadows were deepest. His soldier training came back to him like an old friend, filling his mind with tactics and strategies. There are many guards, Lyra whispered beside him. Too many. Even for you. Maybe, Taeho admitted. But I'm not trying to fight them all. I just need to get in, find Dongwu, and get out. That is still impossible. Taeho looked at her with a strange calm in his eyes. Nothing is impossible. Just difficult. He had spent the night preparing. Lyra had shown him plants that burned when they touched fire. He had gathered as many as he could carry. He had found stones that were hard and sharp enough to use as weapons. He had made a plan that was crazy and dangerous and probably wouldn't work, but it was the only plan he had. When the fire starts, there will be confusion, he explained to Lyra. The guards will leave their post to help. That's when I go in through the east wall. You wait here. If I don't come back by sunrise, run. Find my people's emergency beacon in the escape pod and turn it on. They'll come looking eventually. Lyra grabbed his arm. I do not want you to die. I don't want to die either, Taeho replied. That's why I'm going to survive. He moved through the jungle like a shadow. Years of training had taught him how to be invisible when he needed to be, how to control his breathing, how to place his feet without making sound, how to become one with the darkness around him. When he reached the edge of the compound, he waited for the right moment. A guard turned away. Another yawned and looked at the sky. The patrol moved past his position. Taeho threw the burning plants. The explosion wasn't huge, but it didn't need to be. Fire erupted against the west wall, bright and hungry. Smoke poured into the night sky. Alarms began to ring, loud and sharp. Guards shouted and ran toward the flames, and Taeho started climbing the east wall. His fingers found cracks in the stone that most creatures would never notice. His muscles pulled him up, inch by painful inch. The wall was high and steep, but he had climbed mountains. This was nothing compared to the frozen rocks he had conquered 2 days ago. He reached the top and dropped. Down inside, the compound was in chaos. Guards ran in every direction, trying to understand where the attack was coming from. Some carried water to fight the fire. Others held weapons and searched the shadows for enemies. None of them looked at the simple building in the center of the compound. That was where they kept their prisoners. Taeho moved fast. He stayed low, used shadows, avoided open spaces. When guards came close, he hid behind walls and held his breath. When they passed, he continued forward. Step by step, he crossed the compound without being seen. The prisoner building had only one guard at the door. He was young and nervous, his weapon shaking in his hands. He kept looking toward the fire on the west wall, wondering if he should help. He never saw Taeho coming. The attack was quick and quiet. One arm around the guard's neck. Pressure in exactly the right place. The guard went limp without making a sound. Taeho laid him down gently and took his weapon. Inside the building, the halls were dark and empty. Cells lined both sides, most of them holding creatures Taeho didn't recognize. Strange beings from distant worlds, locked in cages, waiting to be studied. He found Dongwu in the last cell. His friend looked terrible. Thin and pale, with bruises on his face and cuts on his arms. They had been studying him already, taking samples, testing his limits. But he was alive. When his eyes focused on Taeho's face, they filled with tears. "Took you long enough," Dongwu whispered, his voice cracking. Taeho smiled despite everything. Traffic was bad. He broke the lock with the stolen weapon and pulled his friend to his feet. Dongwu could barely walk, his legs weak from days of being locked in a small space. Taeho put his arm around him and took most of his weight. "Can you move?" he asked. "Do I have a choice?" Not really. They made it halfway across the compound before the alarms changed. Someone had found the unconscious guard. Someone had discovered the empty cell. Now the entire compound was hunting for them. Tae-ho could hear shouts coming from every direction. Lights swept across the ground, searching. Guards ran with weapons ready. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run, no way out. So Taeho stopped hiding. He stepped into the open, holding Dongwu with one arm and the stolen weapon with the other. Guards spotted him immediately. They raised their weapons and fired. The energy bolts hit him like punches of pure heat. One in the shoulder, one in the leg, one in the chest. Each one hurt more than anything he had ever felt before. Each one should have dropped him to the ground, but Taeho didn't fall. He kept walking. The guards stared in horror. They had never seen anything like this. Creatures went down when you shot them. Creatures fell and stopped moving. They didn't just keep walking toward you with eyes like burning coals. Taeho reached the first guard and struck him down with one blow. The second guard tried to run, but Taeho was faster. The third guard dropped his weapon and screamed, something about deathwalkers and monsters from nightmare worlds. The stories were coming true. The ancient warnings were standing before them in flesh and blood. By the time Taeho reached the gate, the guards had stopped fighting. They were running, hiding, spreading tales of the creature that couldn't be killed. The prisoner who had walked through fire and pain and death itself. He broke the gate open with his bare hands, metal bending under fingers that should have been too weak. And then he walked into the jungle, carrying his friend, leaving chaos and terror behind him. Somewhere in the shadows, Lyra watched with tears streaming down her face. Not from fear, from wonder. The stories had been understatements. The truth was so much more terrifying and so much more beautiful. The three of them found shelter in a cave deep in the jungle. Lyra worked through the night to heal their wounds. She used her tools and medicines, her skilled hands moving quickly over burned skin and broken bodies. Taeho had been hit by 3 energy bolts. Any one of them should have killed him. The weapons the Hollow Ones used were designed to stop creatures much larger and stronger than humans. But somehow, impossibly, Taeho's body was already healing. The wounds were closing on their own. The burns were fading to scars. "This should not be possible," Lyra whispered as she watched his skin repair itself. "Our weapons are the strongest in the region. They kill everything they hit." "Humans are stubborn," Taeho replied weakly. "Even our cells don't know when to quit." Dongwu slept for 2 days straight. His body needed rest more than medicine. When he finally woke up, he looked around the cave with confused eyes until he saw Taeho sitting nearby. "It wasn't a dream," he said quietly. "You really came for me." "Of course I did," Taeho replied. "We don't leave our people behind." Dongwu looked at Lyra, who was preparing food near the cave entrance. "Who is she?" "Her name is Lyra. She's the reason I'm alive. The reason both of us are alive." Lyra turned and smiled at Dongwu. "I am glad you are awake, other human. Your friend has been very worried. He would not rest properly until he knew you would survive." Dongwu managed a small laugh. "That sounds like Taeho, always taking care of everyone except himself." The days passed slowly in the cave. Both humans needed time to recover, and Lyra was patient with them. She brought food and water. She treated their wounds. She told them stories about her world and listened to stories about theirs, but she also taught them something else. She taught them how to use the emergency beacon in Taiho's broken escape pod. The pod was damaged, but the beacon was still working. If they could activate it, the human fleet would eventually see the signal and send a rescue ship. How long until they come? Dongwu asked. Depends on how far away the fleet is, Taiho said. Could be days. Could be weeks. I'm tired of being on this planet, Dongwu admitted. No offense to you, Lyra. It's a beautiful world. But I miss home. I miss my wife. I miss my daughter that I've never even met. Lyra nodded with understanding. I would miss my home too, if I was far away. It is natural. They activated the beacon that night. A small light blinked in the darkness, sending signals into the sky, hoping that someone somewhere would hear. 3 days later, someone did. The rescue fleet arrived with thunder and lightning. Ships descended from the clouds like metal dragons, their engines roaring so loud that the jungle fell silent. Birds flew away in panic. Animals ran for cover. The Vellani looked up at the sky and saw the legends becoming reality. Commander, Yuna stepped off the first ship to touch ground. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and gray in her hair. She had been searching for the lost squad for weeks, following faint traces of the crashed dropship, hoping against hope that someone had survived. When she saw Taiho and Dongwu standing at the edge of the landing zone, her face showed nothing, but her eyes said everything. Sergeant Park, she said formally. Corporal Kim, you're alive. Yes, Commander, Taiho replied. We had help. Yuna looked at Lyra, who stood behind the two humans with her golden eyes wide and curious. This is the help? Her name is Lyra. She saved our lives. Without her, we would both be dead. The commander studied the alien woman for a long moment. First contact with a new species was always complicated. There were rules about this, procedures that had to be followed. But there were also moments when rules didn't matter. Then we owe her a debt, Yuna said finally. On behalf of humanity, I thank you. Lyra bowed her head slightly. Your people are remarkable, Commander. The stories we tell about them do not capture the truth. They are so much more than we imagined. All around the landing zone, the Vellani were gathering. Word had spread quickly about the events at the Hollow One's compound. Stories were being told about the creature that walked through fire, the prisoner who survived weapons that killed everything, the Death Walker who could not be stopped. They came to see if it was true. And when they saw the ships descending from the sky, when they saw the two humans standing unafraid, they knew that every story was real. Commander Yuna ordered her soldiers to prepare for departure. Medical teams took Dongwu to a ship where he could receive proper treatment. Engineers checked the area for anything worth salvaging from the crash. Everything moved with military precision, but Taiho stayed at the edge of the landing zone, standing with Lyra. Will you come with us? He asked. There's a whole galaxy out there. Humans are just getting started. We could use guides who understand the universe better than we do. Lyra looked at the ships, at the humans moving with purpose and energy, at the evidence of a species that had crawled out of hell and reached for the stars anyway. Your people are terrifying, she said softly. Taiho smiled. Thanks. That was not entirely a compliment. But she was smiling too, just slightly. Your kind does things that should not be possible. You survive what kills others. You fight when you should run. You love with a strength that breaks mountains. You are the most dangerous and the most wonderful creatures I have ever known. She took his hand. Her 4 cool fingers wrapped around his 5 warm ones. Yes, she said. I will come with you, because I want to see what you do next. They walked toward the ship together. Behind them, the Vellani watched in silence. Some were afraid. Some were amazed. Some were already composing new stories to tell their children, and their children's children. The humans came from the death world. They could not be stopped. They would not be stopped. And now they were spreading across the stars, bringing their impossible strength and their unbreakable will to every corner of the galaxy. The old warnings had been right. In the centuries that followed, the legend only grew. Tales spread from world to world, from species to species. Stories about creatures who breathed poison and walked through fire. Creatures who loved so hard they would tear down mountains for their friends. Creatures who refused to accept defeat no matter how impossible the odds. They called them many names. Deathwalkers, survivors, monsters. But the humans had a simpler name for themselves. They just called themselves human. And that, it turned out, was terrifying enough. Far away, on a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star, a child was being born. Dongwu's daughter was coming into the world, not knowing that her father was already on his way home. Not knowing that she would grow up hearing stories about the death world and the impossible creatures who called it home. Not knowing that she, too, carried the same fire in her blood, the same refusal to give up, the same stubborn will to survive, the same human heart that beat with unstoppable determination. And somewhere in the stars, Taeho looked out at the infinite darkness and smiled. They were just getting started.